Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of jest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow. Step into
So what do you think of my jam and tune there, Awkward?
It was like definitely the right thing to get you ready to talk.
There
That's
you
for
go.
sure.
It's AI wrote that.
Ah.
I'm not proud of using AI for that, but when you have no music
Listen,
ability and you have no money, sometimes you got to resort to AI.
well, we can talk later about it. Maybe I can make you an intro.
There
But
you go.
also, if you're going to use AI, this is probably the cleanest, safest, least harmful way to do so.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm a writer, so I'm sensitive to AI,
Likewise.
but you know, uh the you do what you got to do sometimes. So all right, so introduce yourself. You are
Oh
awkward.
no.
Are you actually awkward, or
I was for a very long time. And it's funny, I didn't realize where that came from until I was in my 40s. My daughter is autistic, and the amount of work we put into helping her be the great young adult she is led me to realize that I am also autistic and just not diagnosed, among all kinds of other things. And I think that's where the awkward came from, like feeling different and separate. I always thought it was just being the only Jew or being the only leftist, but I think it's also that I always felt different. Um, and, people who really struggle with autism talk a lot about masking and things like that. And I don't know if I ever did that, but no, at this point, whether it's masking or not, I don't feel awkward around people. I don't leave the house very much anymore. I used to be on the street all the time. Now when I do, I don't feel awkward. I feel okay. Although I'm always waiting for something terrible to happen because we live in a very dangerous world and dangerous country right now. I don't feel, now that I'm in upstate New
to
York.
protect you from that?
What's that? My dog.
The dogs are
I
going
know,
to protect you.
I hope they don't ruin this whole interview. We are finally putting a fence up for those very dogs so they stop running away. But because of that, we got a lot of barking at the people doing the fence. Can you hear me over that?
A little, mostly. I can, but
Okay.
that seems like how if you get different sounds going in the microphone, sometimes the microphone cuts off. It's doing that a little bit, but we'll do it. So, I always ask.
Anyway, yeah.
A random icebreaker question. So today's icebreaker is: what is your favorite Denzel Washington movie?
Oh.
I love this kind of question because there's so many right answers. It's like,
yeah.
Get this one wrong.
Man. All right. I don't think this is my favorite, but because I don't want to sit here thinking for too long, I'm going to tell you the one that first popped into my head, and I definitely like it a lot. It's Training Day.
Training Day is like a classic.
Yeah.
And he really, it's one of his best roles, if it's not his best role for sure.
Yeah. But
Before.
He played a gangster in Harlem. That would be my favorite. I just can't even remember what that one was called, embarrassingly enough.
Yeah, I remember. I can't. I would have told you it if you had asked me
And
30
I ended up becoming friends with the son of the character he played too. This
Oh,
is how
wow.
bad my memory is. But anyway, Denzel's quite an actor and a favorite from a looks perspective too.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Denzel.
Yeah. Did you ever watch that TV show Fresh Off the Boat?
No, I never did. It's about immigrants, right?
Yeah, it's about a Chinese family that
I heard it
immigrated
was awesome.
in the 90s. It was really good. And the mom, like one of the running
Obsessed.
themes through the show was that she was obsessed with Denzel Washington.
Yeah. I think my mom probably was too.
So there was I can't there was can't think of the name of it. There was a show where there was like where he was a cop that was framed for something. I can't remember what it was. I don't think it's like as famous of a role, but it's like one of my so okay. So I do want to mention if you are on Twitter and you want to come over to the Facebook or to the YouTube to watch this, it's a little better for us on YouTube just because I get some credit for some hours on that. And you can just go to my profile page and click on the link to get to there.
Yeah,
So
please do that. My guy does great work. He deserves the support. And conversely, Alon does terrible work. So get the hell off of X.
yeah, boy, Elon, we could. So all right. So
Yeah, you have a whole show about that guy.
what are you? All right, like I have gotten to know you just through interacting on social media, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize you're a rapper, but you're also an activist who has gotten the attention of a certain fascist. Um, and are you
He
anti?
just hates me the most.
Are
I
you an
mean, there's a
anti?
sure. I mean, Antifa, as far as I'm concerned, just means you're anti-fascist. And I'm militant in the sense that I am not a pacifist. And if I were required to take up arms, I would. Am I am I pro-violence? Absolutely not. I am so anti-violence that it affects every day of my life. And we could get into that, but we don't have to. It's it's a it's not something I do actively. I spent 20 or so years, I think I mentioned already, on the streets. That doesn't just mean like living in cities, but also doing direct actions all over the country and putting my body at risk, having guns put to my head, my mask taken off. Now I'm home in upstate New York with a wife and two kids. So the work that I do has shifted because I don't want to leave my kids without me.
Yeah. Well, after you see a couple of people killed, it's so like how did the Kyle Rittenhouse thing like did that hit you personally?
I mean,
Like not that
yes,
you knew the people or anything,
yeah,
but
no. I mean, it's
you
also at the same time that, like, the FBI was going after Reinhold, who like was defending himself, and they just went to his house and killed him.
mhm.
So it's like, yeah, I didn't feel that one as personally. I was very busy, organizing and founding and creating the 10 demands for justice. Um, so there was an insane amount of stuff going on, like from 2020 to 2022, and then plus with COVID and everything else. But when Heather Heyer, which you hinted at, when she was, well, maybe you didn't hint at her, you hinted at deaths during protests.
Yeah.
At Charlottesville, when the Nazis marched there, Heather Heyer was run over by a pickup truck and murdered. And I had actually here not long before made an announcement that I wasn't rapping anymore. I was going to focus just on journalism, just on organizing. And that one hit me so hard. That one I felt so personally. I actually came out of retirement and made a new song and ended up getting back into music.
So when you hear people say that he didn't say there were very fine people on both sides, how do you respond to that?
I say yes, he did. I mean, it's certain things like I'm a relativist, and my wife hates, like, despises this about me. She says, "Are you sure?" And I say, "No." It doesn't matter what the question is. It could be, "Am I sitting next to you?" I was saying, "No, I'm not sure. I think you are." It seems I'm 99.9% sure. Certain things, though, like, are you sitting next to me, or as close to fact as you can get? If we heard him say it, he said it.
Mm.
So they're just lying. I mean,
Well, they're like saying he did, like they've kind of obfuscated what he meant. Like
right.
he wasn't saying that the Nazis were very fine people. He was saying that there was this mysterious third group that
Mm,
somehow
yes.
marched next to Nazis and chanted with Nazis,
Sure.
but weren't actually Nazis. It's like,
Right.
where did this third group come from? Who were they? Were they just, sort of like, well, the Nazis are bad, but they're not as bad as people that like think racism is bad, or like,
Yeah. Those, I mean, the center is confused. They're not going to march with Nazis. You like there's the left, there's the right, and then there's everything in between. And only people who feel extremely strongly about something take to the streets.
yeah.
There is no third group. You're either marching with them or against them, or you're far back trying not to get killed, watching in shock, or you're a journalist or something like that, or a peacekeeper, a street medic. There is no third party that's very fine, but not definable.
Like I always say, that if everybody else in the world isn't, if you think everybody else in the world is an extremist, you're the extremist. Like
Hmm.
if you're
Yeah.
that far off in a corner by yourself,
Yeah.
you're the one that's by yourself. Like that, that should
That
tell
is.
you something. And it's like, the entire Republican Party, and for a while I would distinguish between Republicans and conservatives because but now it's like MAGA, Republican, conservative. Um, it's all become just the same thing. There are some conservatives left, like Rick Wilson, who at least have left the Republican Party, but they've
What
they,
makes him a conservative? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I am.
I
I'm
would say
mo-
I would say he would identify himself as a conservative.
Yeah, okay. I guess you're escaping my question, sir. Because what I'm really like, to me, if you're a Republican, you are not my friend. Period. I
Mhm.
like, as far as I see it, you if you're a Democrat, you have good intentions, you mean well, you may be well informed, but you may not be, and you can benefit from some of the radical information that I have. If you're a Republican or anywhere to the right, of center, it's a whole other story. It means that you are coming from possibly different schooling, but but certainly different upbringing, where you could be generations deep in racist disinformation, which doesn't mean that you can't change. Tons and tons of people have. Actual Nazis have turned into leftist activists, but it means a different type of work. It's not as simple as me getting on a call with you and sharing some abolitionist or anti-fascist information or some personal stories from my incarcerated friends. It's like, we have to get former Nazis to meet with you. We need to make sure that security is in check, that we can actually trust you, that you're really changing. It's possible. As an abolitionist, I believe anyone can be transformed. It's harder for some than others.
So like I don't think we agree on everything. But I
Oh,
don't.
I'm sure we don't, which is
I
fine.
don't think we need to agree on everything
No,
to be able to respect.
exactly.
Like I think that as long as you have a reality-based conversation about things, then you can, have a free flow of ideas and influence one another's thinking and stuff like that. The problem I have with the MAGA movement is that they have departed reality.
And they won't have that conversation. I started smiling as soon as you were saying that, because like we may disagree about, like, this, whether, like, what we can agree on is that if we can't have conversations because neither one of us is listening or willing to hear, if both of us believe that we know everything already, it's a waste of everything, time, energy, whatever. Like, these conversations are only valuable if both parties can learn. And I often learn when I'm being interviewed. I don't. I've gone on some shows with some terrifying people where I haven't learned, and I've actually just bounced because they turned out to be not who I thought they were. But most of the time, I get as much out of this as anyone else does.
So there's this comment from, ironically, somebody named Learning Curves. So why blame Antifa on everything when it's not Antifa? Your record is wrong when it was MAGA all along. I don't know who's blaming Antifa on everything.
I'm also not. I'm also not sure what the record is wrong when it was MAGA all along. If that's referring to you saying that, like, it used to be that there were decent people in the Republican Party, you can respond to that half if you want, but I'll just say that like, Antifa is not a business. It's not a corporation. It's not part of the nonprofit industrial complex. So it is not something that you can go look up and donate to. However, Antifa is real. There are Antifa chapters all over the world, and we all coordinate. You can call yourself Antifa if you're not pro fascism. That's truly all it means. But there are organizers, there
No.
are activists, there are people who go to the streets and stand in the front lines and protect Black women and Black children and have the fistfights and light the police buildings on fire. Those are Antifa. You can blame Antifa. And the reason Antifa is so important, in addition to what I said, protecting people who are truly affected by the injustices and inequality in this country, but also think about Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, and Martin Luther King. If Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party weren't talking about defending themselves with weapons, showing up to government buildings, holding weapons, creating alternative societies where they're schooling their own children, doing their own health care, all without government institutions, what MLK was doing would have been terrifying enough that nothing would have been passed. But in reality, they were so scared of Malcolm X, so scared of the Weather Underground, that they looked at MLK, who was talking about peace and marching with rabbis, that, holy shit, all right, we're gonna do what he's saying because that's the safer alternative. No one's thinking that the government's gonna listen to Antifa, but if the alternative to police stations getting bombed is making a few changes so that every Black person isn't afraid to leave their house, they might consider doing that. It's a safer option.
So, okay. So I think, Learning Curves, and Andy reported.
He's right. Okay.
So I think
Correct.
the confusion
Andy's
here,
full of shit. So
yeah.
all right. So
I
your
think the
first comment
confusion
was
is
not
your
clear.
little your tag there, Antifa militant, Andy. No, that is being worn facetiously, right? You're not like,
Yes.
you're like,
It's a joke.
yeah.
Okay, let me so let me clarify. Andy No is not a journalist. He takes footage from actual journalists, doctors them, cuts them up, puts them up, and lies, and then writes books and sells books about these lies. You can't believe anything that he says. He has sold kill lists to Atomwaffen and a Nazi organization. And I use this as a joke because he did refer to me this way, and I received numerous death threats as a result of his efforts to dox me. So I am not condoning Andy No in any way, shape, or form. And you are right. Everything he says about Antifa is bullshit. This is a joke, but it's also true.
So that made me step back from his view, was his reporting on Antifa all the time when we have all seen it. Yeah. Okay. And they bring up January 6th. And so this is one of the real things I wanted to have you on to talk about. Because I think this is this infuriates me, is when they compare the Black Lives Matter protests and the George Floyd protests with January 6th. And they're like, well, you know, how come you didn't complain when they were burning down buildings? Which, by the way, like at least the police precinct in Minneapolis that they always like to show the pictures of was actually burned down by white supremacists. Let's not forget that. Right?
That is 100% true.
What is your, like, how do you respond to that? Like when they conflate people like saying don't murder black people with, oh no, now black people aren't going to be murdered anymore. Like you literally had white supremacists storming the Capitol and trying to replace the president of the United States because they might not get free reign over, you know, like be able to kneel on the throats of innocent black people anymore.
Right. So, first off, I'm very glad you brought up the point that the police station that was shown burning, that was used over and over and over again, was in fact a Nazi who did that, posed as Antifa.
And they did it for the deliberate purpose of creating that that narrative that the black people were burning down the police precincts. Like,
correct. And I know a lot of people who live around there. You know, Alex Mingus is someone I interviewed. He went viral after doing the police's job for them and then getting an award from the police and then saying don't trust police. It was a pretty incredible series of events. When I interviewed him, he talked a lot about that time period and like what the people of that neighborhood were actually doing. They were hunkering down in their neighborhoods using pickup trucks to like block the police from their communities, because there were literal National Guard tanks rolling down suburban Minneapolis, tossing paint canisters at people on their porches. Like, it was pure madness, and it absolutely wasn't the black people. But so 93 to 96% of the Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful.
Yeah.
93 to 96%. Okay. So that, and then you look at January 6th, where you have just nonstop violence, just from the moment they started their little path in. It was violent in every way. They were attacking journalists. They were attacking police. They were literally looking for politicians to, I don't know. I think I can't even imagine what would have happened if they got a hold of them. So that's the first part. The difference in violence is night and day. So if you look at the protests that did turn violent during the Black Lives Matter movement, it was because the police got angry. Someone got hit up, one cop gets hit with a water bottle and they start shooting. They start blasting people with tear gas. That's not what happened on January 6th. The police were, first of all, they were not prepared. The DC world didn't listen to the FBI, so they weren't prepared. But in any case, those who were just run over. And honestly, I'm not shocked they started letting them in, because they thought they were going to get trampled and murdered if they didn't. So that's the first part. The level of violence was completely different. The second part is why I don't believe that all extremists are the same. I don't like hearing that, because although it is true that if you have that capability for extremism, you are susceptible, and it is possible you could end up in the wrong place with the wrong people and end up going full circle and being extreme on the other end from which you started. But more important than that is the 99% of extremists who would never in a million years do such things by accident or otherwise, simply because the only reason they are extreme is because of how much they care and how strongly they feel. I fall under that category. By the time I was 3 years old, I was like suffering from depression in spite of my privilege, due to the sadness and racism and poverty I saw all around me. So I have been this way since before I even understood what was happening. And so I am extremely pro climate, pro environment, pro animal. I am extremely pro people, pro equality, pro justice. I am extremely against anyone who thinks they're better than other people, anyone who hates, anyone who, discriminates, anyone who chooses violence, who makes it so that I need a gun to protect myself. So that's the other difference, is that these extremists who stormed the Capitol weren't doing it to even free Palestine. They weren't doing it for to get innocent people out of prison. They weren't doing it to get the 45 million people who go to bed hungry every night a home, when there's 30 vacant housing units per unhoused person. They were doing it to take over the government so they could create a dictatorship of hate. To me, it is so cut and dry that if you're doing extreme things for good, it is the opposite of doing extreme things for bad. And hopefully you got that, in spite of my dogs picking up the volume at that important time.
It's a rough background, but I see what I did there.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
But I absolutely agree that there's a difference. Like, from what I understand, you're saying is the difference is whether you're motivated by other people's interests or motivated by self-interest.
Sure.
Like if you're motivated by empathy and fighting for other people's rights and stuff like that, that's a lot of the people on the BLM protests were not Black people. That was one of the things. A lot of them weren't even Americans. They were, marching around the world. And that was, to me, part of the beauty of it, was that finally America was coming together instead of acting like Black people needed to fight this battle on their own, when Black people simply cannot fight this battle on their own. When Black people are fighting this battle on their own, it is viewed by racists as Black people fighting the battle on their own.
And also they're only 13% of the population.
Yeah, and so it's easy to pigeonhole them. It's easy to just, say, like with somebody had mentioned the Rodney King riot, and a lot of that was just kind of delivered as, oh, they're burning their own neighborhoods, and why are they doing this and stuff like that. It was just seen as the Black people are reacting to this kind of thing, and not as 4 white cops went and beat the shit out of a Black man, and they're sitting there trying to like micro freeze the film to make it look like, he's moving while people are beating the shit out of him, as though like that's somehow a flaw of his. Like, no, you have to, while the cops are beating you, you're supposed to stay there absolutely motionless and not even try to cover your head or something. Like, come on, think like a rational fucking human being for a second, like that one. Anyway, like I remember like just being horrified with that. And like
and cameras, thankfully we see it a lot more these days. So people are more aware.
With cell phones and stuff, all of a sudden it's not so easy. But with the January 6th, it was all just, you're gonna take away my white privilege, and you literally had a Confederate flag being walked through the Capitol building. And it's just like, if Jefferson Davis could see that, he would have been so happy, because that guy got farther than the Confederacy ever did. And it wasn't a real Confederate flag, but that's another thing. But
I'm glad I didn't know that. But like the less I know about that, the better. I mean, from a security standpoint, maybe, but I mean, if it looks like a Confederate flag, it's a Confederate flag.
so
Sure.
Greg says even non-extreme.
Yeah. So part of the problem, I mean, I see what you're saying, and in a way it's good that the left doesn't do that. But on the other hand, it's also not so good because, like I was saying with MLK and Malcolm X, for instance, like the people.
Just on the MLK thing, MLK was not all about nonviolence.
Oh no, he wasn't, and he was a communist. But they didn't know that, or they that was not that. Again, he was safer, which is the point. Even with that, they were spying like crazy on him, so they probably knew quite a bit. That he was still safer, and what he was saying publicly, in the most with the biggest audiences, was a little less scary than what he was saying with the smaller audiences. I guess, but my fear with so basically, like I was saying, if I am scaring people, then maybe they'll listen to MPK. If if Antifa is scaring people, maybe they'll listen to the organizations like 10 Demands that were founded and will walk actual demands into the town council. I believe, again, that an ideal world would have 0 barking dogs and 0 violence. But unfortunately, neither is real. And the more afraid the left and the Democrats act, the easier it is for the Republicans and the right to own us. And I don't mean that in like an internet way. I mean in a real terrifying way. And we're seeing it right now. I feel pretty lost, like, as a singular human being who's no longer in the best shape, like, in his life, who doesn't, he's not a gym rat, like, ready to take on anybody. Like, what can I do? Like, what can you do? Like, our Congress people are just getting on steps and complaining while crazy stuff is happening all around us. And we knew this was going to happen. Now is not the time to be the bigger and better person. Now is not the time to say, oh, well, we're pacifists, so we got to take the high road. And sometimes, like, honestly, when your oppressor is violent, I hate to say it, read Ward Churchill if you need to. They don't listen to common sense. They don't listen to flowers. They listen to violence. That's what they know.
Do you know about, I think it's called the tolerance paradox?
Maybe not.
The paradox of tolerance is a philosophical concept suggesting that if a society extends tolerance to those who are intolerant, it risks enabling the eventual dominance of intolerance, thereby undermining the very principle of intolerance.
That's not an abolitionist. Who wrote that? Who came up with that?
This is Karl Popper and the Open Society and its Enemies in 1945. It was a reaction to the fascist and Nazi movements. It's that, if you accept everything, eventually you will accept those who are willing to take away your right to say, so that is the whole thing. The one thing you cannot be tolerant of is intolerance. So when when the nuttos sit there and go, oh, the liberal, the tolerant left, it's like, no, I tolerate race. That doesn't mean I tolerate racism. Like you need to understand, I don't tolerate hate.
Yes.
Like, that does not make me intolerant because I don't embrace your hatred of people because they're gay or trans or black or,
whatever,
Asian or whatever, because I don't use the R word to insult people's intelligence. Like, I mean, and I'm talking about Republican. The
Yeah,
other.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I'll use the word Republican to insult people's intelligence, but they just, it's like I was saying yesterday on Blue Sky that I kind of like it's the Republicans hate everything they don't understand, and they don't understand anything. And it's like when you can put those two things together, you kind of realize where they're coming from. They
So
just blindly hate everything. That's all they
and
do.
yeah, and this is the conundrum for me as an anti-fascist and an abolitionist. Um, Abolitionists believe what I said before, that anyone is capable of transformation, and if you believe that, that means that that word tolerance is going to come into play, right? Like, first of all, that's a whole other conversation that hopefully we can get to also. Tolerance is the wrong way of looking at it entirely, in my opinion. But you have to tolerate ignorance, because ignorance is not intentional.
Well,
It's a
well, it's not always intentional.
well, true
Like,
ignorance is
refusing
not
to
intentional.
learn is like some
Even listen, even
like, at a certain point, ignorance is a choice.
Well, yeah. So what I was going to say is, like, when it comes to Trump, Musk, etc., they are not redeemable. They are educated somewhat. They're incredibly powerful and wealthy. They know, because they have advisors, what is right and what is wrong, what is fair and what is unfair, what is to the benefit of, themselves only, and what is to the benefit of who they perceive to be their enemies. Um, so I'm not talking about trying to give them therapy and get them to come over to the left. I'm talking about the vast majority of this country that is ignorant due to poverty and media bias, and Republicans controlling boards of education, and their parents being one or two generations away from slaveholding, and so this group is massive, and I don't blame them for their ignorance, or even being so ignorant that they don't want to learn. The problem is again, somehow, like, somehow I found Charles Barkley. Someone posted this. I'm not a fan of him. He said some dumb shit before, but he what he said just recently apparently was what I'm focused on, and what everybody should be focused on. It should not be about poor black versus poor white, poor straight versus poor gay. It's the 99% versus the 1%. Remember Occupy? That didn't come out of nowhere. It's because 1% owns everything. They
Yeah.
all pretty much happen to be white, straight, cis, Christian men, but it does that, like, it's, if we all got together, there would be no problem. We could easily.
You probably know this. Did you know that the 5 wealthiest Americans now have more wealth than the bottom half of the country?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
5 versus like 160 million. And it's like that, like, and the right wants to act like we're against, like, like everybody has to have the exact same slice of pie.
right.
No.
Well, they also,
I mean, it's like, it doesn't have to, but can we have
yeah.
between like
yeah.
5 people owning over half the country?
Right. So, like,
The country while
that's
the
why
other-
UBI is good, right? Because, like, I want equity. I the fact that I can't get a job is a good thing. There's been more than enough centuries of people who look just like me getting jobs. I mean, with my last name, not that long ago, I couldn't get a job as a Jew either. But looking like me, it was not hard. Now it is. That's because for freaking centuries, black people had zero chance. Brown people had zero chance. And to this day, what women, what black people, what, indigenous immigrant people make on the dollar versus someone who looks like me is crazy. So, for me, I just think that we have an opportunity here to make things better by giving preferential treatment to people who have always been disadvantaged, who've been disenfranchised. That is never going to fly with the right, ever. Because you're
even
taking
just giving them an opportunity that's even is like
right. Yeah, asking a lot. So UBI, not to like dwell on this, and it's not like my thing, but it's an example of something where anyone should be able to get behind it, and that's why Yang was able to too, right? Because everyone gets the same amount of money. We all need it. We all get it, and then it's up to you how you spend it. And throughout all over the country and all over the world, all of these pilot programs, people are not using it for drugs and gambling. They are actually improving their lives. They're buying, or they're getting homes and food and diapers or whatever. That's something that all of the 99% could benefit from. But again, like that is so far from the mainstream conversation. It's, it's ridiculous.
So like there's like so many different directions we could go right now. But just in the terms of the action we can take right now, let's start off with that one. Because I don't there's a marvelous tangent we could go on the UBI that I would love to talk about.
Yeah.
Like
it's separate.
For right now, sticking on the whole, like how can we protest? I have been getting behind the idea of spontaneous town halls like all throughout the country. And what I think, if you remember, like during the Obama presidency with the Tea Party, they really were able to rise up and kind of take Congress back when it was they had to overcome a much more significant majority. And not that I agree with the Tea Party in any way, shape, or form, but the tactics were effective. And like I had Joe Walsh on the show the other day, and he had more town halls than anybody else in history. And he was, agreeing we need to have town halls. Like I think, and where we have an advantage over what they had, we have YouTube and things like that. The mainstream media has gotten so on board with Trump that they're not going to broadcast these town halls, right? But we can, make them go viral on YouTube. We can have people film them with their phones and, show what's going on. And I think like with protests, I think protests are great, but protests, they have slogans, not speeches. And some of them do have speech, but like generally the walking along kind. I think that this would be a more focused thing where people could actually like speak their issues one by one, and just, if these things were like across the country and inundated YouTube, and it was just, like thousands and even tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people speaking their truth about why they don't want Elon Musk to have their social security number, or why they don't feel that the Constitution should just be torn away. And that, we don't want a dictator. We don't want a king. We don't want a de facto king. We do think the president should not be above the law. Like things that we were raised on, like fundamental truths we were raised on that are now being violated. And they want to talk about free speech and stuff like that. Meanwhile, they're taking it away. They're the biggest violators of free speech. They're like AOC. They're talking about, maybe AOC needs to be prosecuted because she had a web seminar on how to handle ICE. Like they're so fascist that they like, anyway.
Free speech applies to them, just not to us.
But what do you think about like town halls?
Your major point. I'll start by saying that I pay by far the most attention to and put the most weight and value on local politics. It is incredibly difficult to make change at the national level. It's difficult even at the state level. At the local level, there are abolitionists winning seats on town councils. There are, there are leftist district attorneys. There are, first selectmen and mayors who are much more aligned with probably even my values of craziness. And um, this is, of course, the same venue in which you would have these town halls. I absolutely love the idea. I think that it is during the BLM, the really main time of that movement, post George Floyd, those town halls that were held were very effective. The places in which any type of change was made for the positive, where even any consideration of reducing police budgets, was had, those were the results, not of just protests, but it was what I was saying before: protests outside and thinkers, strategists, organizers inside, speaking with leadership. A town hall can be even better, especially in this day and age, because it is so democratic. Assuming there are people who are helping control it, and we don't start to see certain people who look like me getting all of the airtime. And again, like you said, it can be amplified. It can be blasted over social media. It can go viral. That's not something we can expect from established politicians. If what AOC said is worth an indictment, then we know they're not going to get more profound than that, nor does it have the same effect as real people, one after another, and we don't look alike, and we're all feeling the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But having said all of that, the problem with a big tent organization is that it's really hard to manage. How do you don't want a Donald Trump. You don't even want a Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris. You don't want a leader necessarily, but you also need leadership. When you have a lot of people with a lot of differences, little things can cause problems. You can also have, people who shouldn't be there getting inside and screwing with things. I know you're talking about more spontaneous gatherings than true organized collectives. But in order to really turn this into a movement where we can just know there's going to be one here, and we got a full calendar, that does require organization. That requires people to manage, right?
What I've been wondering about, and I've never done this, and I've been trying to figure out what could be done in this regard, is I would need to start off with me figuring out how to do it in my own town.
Mm-hmm.
Where I
live.
There's
a ton of ways to do it.
Try, figure out what do I need to do, and then Matt, this is what you need to do.
All right. So let me give you for your listeners,
and see if you can get a date. Look on your Facebook page. There's probably, most people have some kind of neighborhood Facebook page, and post it on there. Call your representative and invite them, whether they're Republican or a Democrat, to come and answer to the people. And if they don't show up, we're going to have this whether you show up or not. But at least, put that on them to show up. And then if they don't, they look like cowards. And then, spread that in from rather than organize the move, the message, just organize the movement to
I agree. I'm not saying as much, what I'm saying is, if it happened organically, it would be even more powerful, honestly. If you held one and inspired the shit out of people, and then another one was held, and all of a sudden, that's true organic virality, and that's the most effective. Of course, virality is impossible to predict, and so having some organization, not to the message, because that does need to be unique to each locale and to each individual. Just being able to know that, and this is where I want Gen Z, Gen Z,
and whether it goes viral or not, almost doesn't matter. If you do it and it doesn't go viral, that doesn't mean it failed.
No, of course not.
You
Of
know,
course not.
like,
No, no.
it does go, but like never fall says, or just get up off your ass and go do it yourself. That's what I'm saying. Like
Yes.
we need like everybody where they're at to say, you know,
So
I need to do something. I need to set up the town hall
yes, I agree with that.
instead of setting let waiting for somebody else to do it. But
Agreed.
it might help to give them a template for this is how
Yes.
you do that.
Yes. And so everything you said works. And it is probably your first bet to go through the proper channels, particularly because this isn't meant to be a traditional protest. It's a town hall, it's a gathering. And that is a very powerful thing unto itself. It's a safe space of for peace and harmony, and that can be really powerful. And um, you know, it's possible though that your town hall, your politicians, whoever, are not going to allow you to do that. And at that point, you need to do it anyway, because getting arrested for standing in front of a town hall, um, speaking about what
Well,
everyone in your
most towns have like community centers or something
yeah,
that are supposed to be available to anybody for any reason. Like
political or
it
otherwise.
doesn't literally have to be in this town hall.
No, I know, I
You
know. Basically, my point is that if you don't get permission, that's not a good enough reason not to do it. In my opinion, one of the things that makes protests a little silly a lot of the time is the fact that you are literally getting the cops' approval to have it. Often we're protesting those very same police. Just go out there and do it. And if they arrest you and beat you, now you can sue them. And it's on video, unlike in the past, like when I was doing it. There are no videos of me. Um, so anyway, yes, I think it's a great idea. And if you're inspired out there by this, then yes, go do it. And here's the only thing I'll add, or one thing I'll add is the press. You mentioned inviting politicians, definitely a good idea. Hold them accountable, but invite the press too. And develop relationships. The more people in your community that you have with you when you're starting it, the better. But also, the more connections you have in the press, the better. We know what's happening at the national level with mainstream media, but there are tons of independent publications that have really strong followings that will go local. And there's also local media that are always local to you. And that is required. When I spoke to Sarah Nelson, who runs the Union for Flight Attendants nationally, about union organizing, workers' rights, and a general strike, what she said was, in order to have a general strike, you can't just have like all the leftists who agree with each other. That's number one. You have to have everybody. A general strike will only work if we can convince all the working poor and all the working class and poor people that we are all on the same side and we will all benefit. And the second we all stop working, the corporations will have to listen to us. But if we don't have the backing of the media, it'll get shut down real quick. So that's always a benefit too to something local. The media can help amplify it also and add some credibility if that's desirous or
and that
desirable.
the other thing that it can help with, and I was thinking of it kind of occurred to me as you were speaking, that a lot of the people that ended up getting elected in 2010 were people that rode that town hall wave into office. They were not, they didn't go into the year 2009 thinking that they were going to be in office in 2010. And so, like this could also be, and a lot of them were in districts where they were it was supposed to be impossible for them to win. Like Joe Walsh, for instance. He was like he was like a 2-to-1, like the
Underdog.
the previous person won 2-1. And he had so little chance. The Republican Party didn't even give him a dime. He just, you know, but I'm not trying to, say I was like I didn't vote for Joe Walsh and I lived in Illinois. I was not, but just strategically, this is also a chance to win houses or win seats in Congress that we wouldn't win. And when I say we, I mean not MAGA. Like at this point, we just need to think in terms of MAGA and not MAGA. I think, I think the country needs to move a lot further to the left. But I think right now to just look at it in terms of, as they say, you don't negotiate, you don't debate the color of the curtains while the house is burning down. Like,
I like that. Yeah. As someone who has always been radical, I agree with you. And I think that those who are radical like me need to keep saying radical things. And the vast majority of the people need to continue to fight to prevent as much MAGA as possible, just like you're saying.
And I think we need to redefine what radical means. Like, we are in a country that defines universal health care as being radical. Where, to me,
that's not what makes me radical.
Rationing healthcare according to like job status and income, to me, that is radical. Like
100%. Right.
Universal healthcare is normal. Like we need to move towards normal, and we need to stop calling normal radical.
I'll give you an example then. I don't believe in borders. I don't believe in prisons. I don't believe in police. So that makes me radical. Not like wanting equality and justice for all, wanting healthcare for all, wanting this earth to exist for our grandchildren. None of those things are radical. And if you don't believe in those things, then you're probably MAGA.
Right. Well, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we don't have police or
probably not,
because I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we don't actually have victims in crimes.
We could have a whole
people
show about that.
And you've got to do something with people that murder them.
Abolitionists do not believe that there shouldn't be consequences. We believe that there should be true consequences where people pay reparations to families, to victims' families, to communities. Prisons have been proven not to be successful in deterring crime or making victims' families feel better. And police don't stop crime, and they only solve 2% of all major crimes while committing a third of all stranger murders nationwide. So we've all been born to believe that there's no alternative. And we've also been taught to believe that anyone who considers themselves an abolitionist believes in full-on chaos. Believe me, that's the opposite of what I want. I am so anti-violence, as I've said, it's painful. We just believe
my larger
there are
point
different solutions.
We don't even need to agree on that right now to agree.
No, I know. It's a whole separate conversation for sure.
They
fundamental agreement is what this is about. We fundamentally agree that what we're seeing in this country is not proper, is not acceptable. And we're seeing crimes committed by police, we're seeing crimes committed by politicians, and we're seeing crimes committed by corporate CEOs and other billionaires. And those are the crimes I want to focus on.
So here's a little story for you. This is one of my favorite stories in the whole world. It was 1994, and this guest speaker was speaking at the University of Minnesota, and I went to go see him speak. And he was like so impressive, the most impressive speaking I had ever heard. And he was an activist from Chicago. And so afterwards, I can't remember the exact scenario that led to the question, but he was sticking around to answer questions afterwards. So I went up to him afterwards. I asked him about the situation, why something was allowed to, was even legal that the Republicans in Congress were doing. And he said, you have to understand the difference between the wrong things rich people do and the wrong things poor people do. Is that the wrong things poor people do scare the rich, and the wrong things rich people do affect the poor. But the rich people are the ones who make the laws, and so they're never going to be illegal. And that was like a paradigm shift for me. Like it was just our paradigm forming even type of moment for me. You know who the guy was?
Obama.
It was Barack Obama. He was,
Yeah.
you know,
I knew it. That's the best part of the story.
so you've heard it. I posted it on Twitter.
I hadn't actually. I just knew it. I knew it had to be. The problem, though, is the propaganda, the mainstream media, and the collusion between corporate and government, the big profit motive in the prison industrial complex. That's why certain things are illegal and certain things aren't. That's why the penalty for crack was 100 times the penalty for cocaine. Yeah. You know, it basically the crimes that poor people commit are not against rich people typically. It's the same. You commit crimes where you are.
That's why I think it was important. Scare rich people. Not
exactly right. Fair. Yeah. Good. Very good point. Right. Scares rich people. This panic, this social scare that we created of this bad black man in an alley. It's not real. Stranger danger is not real. You know, sexual assaults and rapes happen by family members, and most theft is committed by people in desperate situations who have no alternative. Whereas corporate theft far exceeds all robberies combined. Even what police take from people through civil asset forfeiture every year exceeds what is stolen through robbery and other criminal theft. So again, that's why 1% and 99%. We have to stop thinking about right and left and start focusing on who the real enemy is.
This is why I say the Republicans are engaged in a class war, and we're not even fighting that war. And that to me is like, that is the biggest issue. And they're engaging in a culture war that we're not fighting back on. So we're in this two-front war, and we're not fighting back on either war. We're the little dog or whatever it is sitting in the middle of the burning restaurant and saying everything is fine. But like, I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you're as old as me, but are you Gen X?
I am, depending on whose definition, I'm either the youngest Gen X or the oldest millennial.
Okay, so you're like so like, we're the first generation that aren't doing better than our parents did. You know,
right.
Like generation. There is a frustration in society right now that the MAGAs, even though the Republicans are largely responsible for it, with the wealth gap growing and
trickle down economics,
like the trickle down economics, like all of that is really, I mean, it's due to years of Reagan voters and all of that kind of stuff, and they want to pretend that they didn't have anything to do with that or the Afghan war or any of that shit. But they want to, they're the American people, whether you're MAGA or a Bernie bro or to the left or to the right or in between, everybody's pissed off right now. And the Democratic Party is sitting there going, everything is fine. The Democratic Party, or they're saying, they're just, saying you need to be angry about Trump taking away democracy, which you do. But why are people listening to Trump? That's what the Democrats aren't hearing. Like, why is he able to engage those people? And it's because he's engaging the anger, just the frustration of like the current hopelessness that people have. And
exactly.
like the Democrats ignore it. And we need to start tapping into the anger and redirecting it and saying, look, the thing you're pissed off about, it's because of those assholes that write the Federalist Society right now that are trying to secure another generation of the same fucking thing. Like, You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It boggles my mind how inept the Democratic Party is. And if you take offense to that, I think you should step back, because you don't owe anything to the party. They owe you. If you consider yourself a Democrat, that's great. It doesn't matter to me. I don't consider myself anything. I'm just talking about the idea that the party that you've given everything to refuses to take a strong stance on anything. They would rather lose pretending to be conservative than win risking coming off as radical. So if you just sit in the middle and are like, everything's not so great, but like, we have to work within the system. And
Chuck Schumer wants you to be aroused.
Say it again.
Chuck Schumer wants you to be aroused.
Oh, I was that a comment someone let? I missed it.
About people being aroused, and it's just like, ooh, like two words I never want to hear in conjunction with each other are
it's
Chuck
like
Schumer and aroused. Like, please get that.
It's like the word moist. Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'm happy I missed that. I really do think that I agree with you. That's what it comes down to is doing your job well. The Republican Party has always been significantly more skilled at propaganda, at mind control, at all of it, at organizing of the right is well armed and well organized. The left is so busy, nitpicking each other and name calling each other and like deciding who's more like more godlike, more purity. That's it. We're so busy with this purity bullshit. Like, we're not organized at all. And so many of us rightfully are anti-violence and anti-gun that we're not even looking at the reality of, God forbid the Civil War happens. We're not prepared for that. We're not, and like we can't even stand up to Republicans on television. We can't convince the media, the mainstream media, to tell true stories. We need independent media to do that for us. And as long as that's the case, they're going to keep controlling shit.
It's like, I live in Texas, and I just can't fathom how somebody could be on a debate stage with Ted Cruz and not utterly humiliate him for the entire time.
Like, I mean, every debate, like, just put me on there, man.
Beard hates you. That's why it always looks like it's trying to escape. Like, you are literally so odious that your own daughter wants to get away from you. Like, come on. Your dog hates you. Your daughter hates you. Your wife hates you. Your neighbors hate you. Why should I vote for you when everybody that knows you hates you? Al Franken said, I think more of Ted Cruz than most of my colleagues, and I hate Ted Cruz. Like, he is, how do you lose to Ted Cruz? Like, not in the election, but in the debate. Like, it should be so easy to just point out what an odious little weasel fuck.
Yeah. And that's why just like having a Marianne Williamson on the stage is a benefit. Like, there's zero chance she's going to win. She might say some things that confuse you or don't seem to be applicable, but she's also going to bring up some stuff that no one else is. And I just think like you're not going to out a conservative. That's the point. Like, if you're on the left, you need to act like it. Be brave and say the things that your constituents actually want to hear. We all are trying to decide between paying the rent, feeding our children, and going to the doctor. Just fucking say that.
So I just want to say there is like, I cannot display all the comments that are going on the YouTube section, but if you're on X, go over to YouTube and look at it, because there is like a really good conversation going along on it between Learning Curve, Greg, Neverfall. They're all making really great points, and I just don't want them to feel like I'm ignoring them. It's just I can't like point them all out without just horning in on what you're saying.
All right, just pause for 1 second. I am talking to Hawk Newsom at 12:30 about BLM. Interestingly enough, I'm writing an article about what happened. Black Lives
Mhm.
Matter was founded, I believe, in 2013. If not, it was late 2012. And yet, most of us think that it started in 2020. By 2022, 2023, there were a lot of liberals jumping on the anti-BLM bandwagon because a couple people used money in a way they shouldn't, and there became this splintering from this international corporation and all of the local chapters that were doing all of the real work. And so I interviewed Dr. Melina Abdullah, who was one of the first Black Lives Matter leaders. She founded BLM LA and BLM Grassroots. And Hawk was a leader in New York for Black Lives Matter. And so I'm speaking with him to get, one other perspective on that. That article is going to be in Counterpunch if I can ever get my shit together. So we got a couple more minutes. I just wanted to explain why I was leaving. It's not because I'm not having a blast.
No worries, actually. And I realized I told you I would give you a chance for a hard out like 20 minutes ago and didn't.
No, it's good.
So
It's
I
all good.
do want to give you a chance here to pitch your Twitter handle, your Blue Sky handle, your website, your YouTube channel, anything you want to,
This always
your self-promotion opportunity.
Yeah, this always makes me feel weird. I mean, you can Google AWKWORD, and unless it switches it to the correct spelling of awkward, there's a bunch of stuff that'll come up. But as opposed to focusing on myself, I like to use this time to focus on somebody else or some other organization. I would say, in addition to checking out BLM Grassroots, I would look up Kat Brooks and Anti-Police Terror Project. They do incredible work. Kat's a longtime organizer. She co-founded APTP and is the executive director there. If you have any extra money lying around, which is unlikely in this day and age, they're a great organization to give to. They don't use the money for nefarious causes. They help directly impacted families, affected by police violence.
So if you want to send me any links or anything about that, then I'll go ahead and add it to the descriptions section. You can just send it to me on Blue Sky or whatever. And then once we're all done, I'll go ahead and add it to the description section on the YouTube video so that people can follow that. Cool. So we'll go ahead and we'll stop here so that you have a chance to prep before your next thing. Really appreciate you coming on. It was nice to get to know you. Like we've known each other online, but never really, I feel like we got to know each other a little better. And
definitely.
You've been a great guest. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me. You do great work. And I'm happy to do it again anytime.
All right. Well, we'll take you up on that.
All right. Peace.